Thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight. We're excited to hear from the two city attorney candidates. We're excited to have Phil Schumann as our moderator again from Fox 11 News. We've got a full calendar tonight, so we're going to kind of rush through some of our housekeeping items first, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of tonight's meeting. Also, at the end of tonight's meeting, I'm going to let you guys know about our next month's meeting. Our speakers, we're very excited to have this person on the call. You guys, everybody on this call and more will want to make sure that you tune in because this person has a lot to say. So let's first have an introduction from our board members, starting with Bob.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Anderson, Vice President and Chair of the Transportation Committee.
Okay, we rehearse this all the time. And
Jules, you're next.
Jules, unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jules Spear. I am responsible for community outreach.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Tom Glick, board member, chair of the Planning and Land Use Committee.
Hi, John Eisen. I'm treasurer of the association.
Maria Calban, I'm chair of the Legislative Committee.
Hi, Nancy Segoyan. I am membership chair. Welcome, everyone. If you're not a member, please join us. You go to joinsoha@gmail.com with any questions and go to our website, joinsoha914.com to click on the Join SOHA button. And we look forward to having you. We need your support. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Jay Weitzler. I am secretary of the board, and I'm also on the committee with Jules advising Buckley, and I'm also liaison to the Hillside Federation.
Great, thank you. We've got a great board and really proud to work with all of you guys. Andy Solomon is our neighborhood prosecutor. He works in the city attorney's office, and it's a good thing because we've got our city attorney candidates here. So actually, Andy got all dressed up for us tonight, and because he's going to impress one of you guys, it's going to be his next boss, right, Andy?
Right.
We love Andy. He's been a great asset to our community. Andy, what do you have for us?
Well, I love your community as well. I'm the neighborhood prosecutor for Van Nuys and Sherman Oaks. As you guys know, I work on all the issues that are not solved by typical government intervention. Right now, I've been working still on Ventura and Stern. I've been working with Ryan. I don't want to steal much of his thunder, but we have done a lot of work there. A lot of it's been cleaned up, not entirely, but at least the people that are remaining are hopefully going to abide by the law as the law stands. Funny thing, I got a call from a dentist office on Woodman yesterday, and I went up there to check it out today and found some characters from Ventura and Stern there. Crossing my fingers, told the slow, I was with another slow who doesn't belong there, but he definitely helped out. We passed on some of that information to Officer Saldana. We're hoping that that person will be housed because that person was reached out to before and refused. However, after being told again he can't be where he is now because he was on private property in an abandoned area, he now is more open to being housed. So we'll see if that follows through. If not, then we'll keep trying and we'll keep working with the council office and police to make things happen. If you guys have any questions, I'm down to a minute here. So if you have any questions or any issues, always email me. My email address is, it's on one of these corners, but andy.solomon, SOLIMAN @lacity.org. Even if I'm not the right person to reach out to, please feel free to reach out to me and I will point you in the right direction for government help. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Andy. And also, I want to thank you. We had a lot of folks that were calling in and emailing us in about the tagging and the ugliness of what was going on at Woodman and Ventura. And I know you reached out to those guys and that's been cleaned up. Thank you for staying on top of that. Also, do you have an update on Colbath and Ventura? Because I know that was kind of a blight area that was starting to get tagged. It looks like it's under construction. Do you have any idea what's going in there or what?
I don't know about Colbath, but I forgot to tell you guys a pretty significant thing that was on the news. The gentleman who threw feces at one of the business owners on Ventura Boulevard I'm sure you guys saw the clip on the news. I had the pleasure of watching it when it wasn't redacted, and the aftermath of a situation where someone throws feces at the windshield of a car. Not pleasant. Did not want to watch it a second time. But I'm actually working with the neighborhood prosecutor in West LA area. She's actually the bureau prosecutor for the entire West Bureau, who had him for another crime from 2019 that he skipped town on over there. So once we found out, we connected the dots. I worked with her. We worked with DMH. They have a specialized home team, which is a very, very targeted team that helps high need individuals. And they now, with a lot of finessing in both courts, Van Nuys and in LAX court, we were able to get the court to send him to mental health court, which triggers then a series of events with DMH team who was on standby for us to then, now they're taking over hopefully, and they will, I think they will seek a conservatorship for him or at least some intensive services, but he's off the street for a while, at least for the time being, until this path runs its course.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Elisa? You there?
Eliza has disappeared,
Eliza,
Matt.
she's okay. So that's a field deputy for Nazarian. Ryan, you're up next then. Ryan is our field deputy for Council District 4. Welcome.
Thank you, Matt. Hi, everyone. Ryan Ahari, Sherman Oaks Field Deputy for Councilmember Nathia Rahman.
Hey, Ryan, since you came from Nazarian's office, you want to give their report as well?
If I get Elisa to forward it to me.
No, I'm right here. Sorry. I just had
He's
to.
back on. She'll go after Ryan.
Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead, Ryan. I'm sorry.
No worries. To give my update, the council office was very excited to join the Sherman Oaks community for yet another street fair, which happened just this past Sunday, first time in 2 years, which was fantastic. I think this was the biggest turnout the street fair has ever had, which is amazing for our entire community, especially the businesses lined up against Ventura. But our office was there, the council member was there, her family, our staff. So we were excited to see so many different constituents who are in the area. I also wanted to let you all know that the Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council is celebrating its 20th birthday. CD4 has partnered with the Neighborhood Council for a festival and a movie in the park. It's going to be on October 29th. Starts at 5, Van Nuys Sherman Oaks Park, the softball fields closer to Hazeltine. 7:15 is when the movie begins, and it's going to be Nightmare Before Christmas. There's going to be makeup artists, there's going to be, or face painters, I should say. There's going to be food carts, live performances. So please, everyone, come and join our Neighborhood Council for 20 years of incredible community work. And then finally, I wanted to let you all know, of course, the council member was the council member after Councilmember Bonin, who called on the resignations of all council members, Martinez, De Leon, and Cedillo. We continue to wait for the resignations of the remaining 2 council members. Kevin De Leon today indicated he will not be resigning, which is very frustrating because council is doing virtual sessions right now. We need these folks to resign their positions so we can move forward as a city in healing and fixing any systems we have that can lead to corruption. But I do want to let you all know that it is the council members' motion that has been passed by all of City Council on Tuesday. This was a motion that would pursue a fully independent redistricting process for our entire city. And it also includes other charter reforms as well for the rest of the city, such as extending the number of council members and anything else that can make us vulnerable to self-dealing and corruption. So it's our council member out there who's fighting to bring transparency and disinfectants anywhere it's needed. If anyone needs to get a hold of our office, please contact me, ryan.ahari@lacity.org. You can also call or text 213-424-2412. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Elisa, you want to go ahead and?
Yes, hi, everybody. Sorry about that. I had to go from phone to computer and it glitched. Yes, the assembly member as well has called for the resignation of those involved in what happened in that closed door meeting. So I wanted to say that as well. There was the assembly member did put out a statement. And as the office is coming to a close, we're still doing a lot. of events. One event including Saturday and Sunday, October 22nd and 23rd, there will be a free women's self-defense class with Jean Morrison in person. It's going to be held both Saturday and Sunday from 1:30 to 3. When you email your RSVP to the office, we will let you know the location. The email is the general office email, which is assemblymember.nazarian@assembly.ca.gov. You can also call the office to RSVP to 818-376-4246. It would be best if those emailed. Again, these are free in-person self-defense classes with Jean Morrison being hosted by the office Saturday, October 22nd and Sunday, October 23rd from 1:30 to 3. I know everybody's got a lot to do on these meetings, so that's the announcement for tonight, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Bob, you want to give your report on what's been going on with this Sepulveda Pass Transit? Bob, unmute yourself.
Thank you, Matt. Maria was next, so I wasn't ready for you.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I'm so sorry. Maria's up, and then we've got Larry up. I'm so sorry.
Okay, I'll put her on next.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Anderson. I'm the transportation chair, and I'm in charge of the fight against Metro on the Sepulveda Transit Corridor Program. Don't get us wrong. We support rapid transit. SOHA supports it very, very strongly. But what we don't support is Metro continuing to investigate a concept that has elevated trains above Sepulveda Boulevard in only the valley side. They call it a subway, but it's not a subway in the valley. And there are other options that Metro has that are affordable. And the second point I need to make is that none of the subway options that Metro is looking at, they have any chance of ever affording. They have about $7 billion. The cheapest they're going to build any of the subways is about $20 billion. If they can tell us where the $13 billion is going to come from, we'll support the subway. If they can't, we support the monorail. But right now we're fighting to make sure that we don't get elevated trains along Sepulveda Boulevard and ruin our community and Van Nuys. So to do that, we've started a fundraiser. We have to contact more people than are on our mail list and that we can do through meetings and everything else. So our fundraiser is going to be used to help us contact people along the route. And if we even get enough to help us have public meetings and events to get more people to understand what could happen to their neighborhood. I'll give you an example. If you live at Valley Vista in Ventura, on the south side of Valley Vista, a little hill there, very nice little area. Metro, if they put the Sepulveda Pass, the Sepulveda elevated trains, is going to tear all those houses out on the end of the block and put a 50-foot tunnel in that hill, coming out and running all along Sepulveda. So we've got a lot to fight. You'll see email blasts. You can go on our website and click on the fundraiser, which there's a button on the front page. Anything you can contribute. Thank you already to the people who have contributed. That's all.
Thank you, Bob. And the fundraising effort is going very, very well. So again, step up to the plate and send your donations into that. We can't do it without your money. So next up is Maria.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, everybody. Just wanted to let everyone know that this Friday, our coalition of community groups from Encino, Sherman Oaks, and Studio City is meeting with Councilmember Nithya Raman regarding the housing element. We will be asking her to remove the housing overlays the city is proposing for many of our single-family neighborhoods that would rezone our neighborhoods and allow apartment house developments that can be 33 feet higher than currently allowed in these single-family zones. We'll be showing the council member how we can add all the housing the state is mandating of us without the need for these overlays. So I'll let you know our next step with my SOHA letter next month, and we'll go from there. So thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Maria. Next up is Larry Slade. He's going to give us a report on the Unhoused / Homeless Committee.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, everyone. My name is Larry Slade. As Matt said, I have the honor of being the chair of the Homelessness Committee for the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association, along with other board members, John Eisen and Tom Glick. Thank you, gentlemen, for your help with it. Our committee's been very active in the last couple of months. We've been focusing primarily on the homelessness issues as it's impacted businesses in Sherman Oaks on Ventura Boulevard. If you've been watching local news over the last couple of weeks, Sherman Oaks has been plastered across Fox News 11 and actually turned into a national story about the activities of the homeless and the, for lack of a better expression, mentally unstable on Ventura Boulevard that have had a pretty severe impact on many businesses there. And so the news coverage is not necessarily positive for Sherman Oaks, but we've seen even in the midst of this meeting that it's had some immediate mitigating impacts. In terms of the long-term picture, my committee is working on specifically focusing on issues regarding the mentally ill and how they impact not just business, but local areas, and what, if anything, can be done to take them off the street. We're working to further cooperation with the LAPD, working to promote bicycle patrols, looking at creating sources of funding from both public and private sources to create some kind of a local intervention program where we can actually be active in cleaning up the streets, both residential and business areas on our own behalf and not necessarily relying exclusively on the police or the council member and the city council for support. Some things we need to do on our own as well, and we're exploring all of those options, and I'll continue to update you as we move along.
Great, thank you very much, Larry. And Larry, by the way, everybody on the audience tonight, Larry is not a board member. He is just a community member that cares enough about the community to step up to the plate, has been very active with our association on other issues. And if anybody wants to join any of these committees along with either Bob or Maria or Larry or any of the other committees that we have, feel free to reach us at our website. We'd love to have you guys on as long as you're willing to work. We don't want complainers, we want doers. So, all right. So next up we have Phil Schumann. Phil Schumann has been a great friend to our community. He's done a few moderating of our debates lately and in years past. He does a great job. And your local 11 did a great job recently with the homeless or the unhoused. I don't know which is the politically correct way to say it nowadays, but the folks on the street report. And unfortunately, Sherman Oaks was the focus of this, but it's, again, like Larry had said, it's good, and you guys did a great job. So Phil, you have the mic now, and let's meet our next city attorneys and see what they have to say.
Okay, thank you, Matt, and thanks everybody for having me. I appreciate it. Enjoy doing these things, and hopefully we can help people make a decision if they haven't already. So the way this is going to work is each candidate is going to get about 3 minutes to introduce themselves. Hopefully people here have taken the time to do a little research on their own, so we know a little bit about each of you already. And then I get to ask some questions. You'll have about 90 seconds or so to answer. You'll each get a chance, and then we're going to have questions. We have many questions sent in from audience members, from SOHA members. And then at the end, we anticipate you two getting to ask each other some questions, which might be interesting and enlightening and maybe even fun and different. Can I use your first names? Is that okay? Hydee and Faisal? So I flipped a coin and Hydee came out first. The first question is very simple. Because both of you are relatively new or brand new, really, to
you need to give them a 3-minute introduction, Phil.
Right. Since both of you are running for office in Los Angeles for the first time, for about 3 minutes or less, if you'd like, give us, introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourselves and what brought you to this point in your lives. Hydee, could you go first?
Sure. First of all, thank you to the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association for hosting us. Thank you to Phil Schumann for moderating, and to all of you for being here. My name is Hydee Feldstein Soto, and I've been a proud Angelina for the last 40 years. I was born and raised in San Juan, Puerto Rico. So Spanish is my original language, and I left the island to study at Swarthmore College and Columbia Law School. 7 winters in the Northeast was enough. And when I graduated from law school, I immediately moved to LA, and I've been here ever since. I had a long and distinguished career in private practice, and I served on my neighborhood council following my retirement from big law firms until March of this year. I am running to end corruption at City Hall, to tackle our homelessness crisis, and to make sure that our city is safe. That means cracking down on domestic violence, guns, hate crimes, and human trafficking, among other misdemeanors. The LA City Attorney's Office is the largest public law firm in the country, and our residents deserve to have the power of that office working every single day to fix these problems and what's broken in LA. I've spoken to tens of thousands of Angelenos since I launched my campaign almost 2 years ago. Young people who are coming to LA as I did to follow their dreams, parents who want safe parks and safe neighborhoods for their families and their kids, and seniors who love this city and want to see it working again. I have spent my career managing attorneys and practicing law with stakes as high as those we face in LA, and I want to bring that experience to fix this office and make it work to solve the problems we all see. I will put an end to no-bid contracts that are driving the cost of building our housing 10 times higher than what it should be, while enriching political insiders. I have never run for office before, and I am abundantly clear that I will not seek another office beyond the city attorney's, a job I have spent my entire career preparing to do. I will be an independent voice for the people of LA and this city that I love and have called my home. I have been endorsed by our 4 major newspapers, the LA Times, the LA Daily News, La Opinión, and the Los Angeles Sentinel. I am the only endorsed candidate of the Los Angeles County Democratic Party, Planned Parenthood, the Sierra Club, the League of Conservation Voters, and dozens of businesses, business groups, labor groups, and unions, community organizations around the city. My mission is simple: to do the job of city attorney as a lawyer, to help make the city work for all of us. My opponent and his supporters have tried to paint me by soundbite as someone who I am not and never have been. I welcome this evening's questions as an opportunity to respond directly to the community and clarify my record. Thank you very much. Please vote, and I hope that you'll join me in building an LA that works for everyone.
Thank you. Faisal?
Hey, hi, how are you doing? Thank you all very much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here to listen to my vision and what I want to offer for the city attorney's office. So I do thank you very much for that. And thank you to the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association for putting this event on. And Bob, I really enjoyed your emails. They were very detailed and gave all the right information. So folks, Los Angeles is at a crossroads right now. We have made important changes that are moving our city in the right direction, but there's still politicians and candidates out there who would rather stick to the status quo. They want to lead by fear mongering instead of a vision as to how we can do better. Before I get into my vision, let me start by telling you a little bit about myself. I'm an immigrant. I immigrated from Pakistan when I was 8 years old. I grew up in a very working class community right outside of Washington, D.C. My father was a cab driver, and my mother worked at various retail stores and grocery stores. We didn't have much growing up, and I knew I wanted a better life. I wasn't a very good student. One day, my father took me and my brother out in a cab ride and basically to work with him. And at the end of that day, he looked at both of us and said, now you two have a choice. You can either be in the front seat of this cab or you can be in the back seat of this cab. And that was my scared straight moment. I went to community college and I went to undergrad and went to law school. I tell folks that I graduated high school in 1990 and in June of 1990. And then in October, I had my first child, not the preferred way of doing things. After graduating from law school, I joined the Navy. I was a JAG Corps officer, which is when I first came to California. After being JAG, I worked in the government. And then after that, I've been in the private practice. After leaving the government, I've been a lifelong civil rights attorney. I fight every day to protect people who face discrimination. I've made it very clear what my priorities are for the city attorney's office from the start. I will take on corruption in City Hall by holding corrupt politicians accountable for the misconduct. I'm not holding politicians by holding every single department. I will reform our criminal justice system so that we can connect our communities with opportunities rather than incarceration. And I will focus on long-term solutions to the homelessness crisis, like housing and mental health treatment, to get people back on their feet and permanently off the streets, not just move them from one place to another. I have the experience to make this vision a reality. After serving as Deputy General Counsel for a major federal agency, I worked in the White House. After that, I've managed my own practice. Our campaign coalition, with the support of strong labor unions, the two largest ones in the county, SEIU 2015 and 721, we came in first place in the primary by a margin of over 24,000 votes. I am proud to have the support of powerhouse leaders such as Supervisor Holly Mitchell, Senator Kidney. Oh, so Reggie Jones, I know it's 10 seconds. I forgot about that. Reggie Jones Sawyer, Isaac Bryan, Tina McKenna, and the California Faculty Association, the California Nurses Association, and National Union of Healthcare Workers. I look forward to describing our vision further today.
So Hydee, you were listening to that with sort of a smirk on your face. Did you find that like amusing or wrong or hard to believe? What was your reaction to what you just heard?
Well, I think that when my opponent says that he has been in civil rights litigation since he left the federal government and under George W. Bush, he tends to omit a lot of what he's been doing for the last 20 years. And that's the explanation for the smirk. He has run for office in 2 other states, 2 other times. He has defended a federal marshal accused of brutality and excessive force against an imprisoned person. He has been a registered lobbyist in Washington, D.C. with respect to defense contractors. And there's just a whole lot of story there that is covered up by, I've been a civil rights lawyer since I left the government.
So Faisal, you ran for and lost for office in the Virginia House of Delegates in 2007. You lost, that was as a Republican. As a Democrat in 2016, you lost a race for the Vermont State Senate. So she uses that as a criticism of you. Maybe that's you demonstrating your commitment to the political process. I mean, how do you answer that?
Look, I absolutely make no apologies for running for office. I think, whichever community I have lived in, I have always been active. When I lived in Virginia, before I ran for office, I was on my local library board for many years. I was active in the local party. I was active in local community organizations. I was active in my local school. When I moved to Vermont, I was active in the Community Services Commission where I lived. I don't view running for office as a bad thing. I also don't view being involved in your community as a bad thing. I think more people should do that. Whatever way they want to serve, they should serve. That doesn't mean that I didn't work as a civil rights attorney. I mean, I did work as a civil rights attorney, and my records is pretty clear. You can look at the cases that I've worked in, starting from 2005 when I defended a police officer who was there for defended a person who was wrongfully arrested in Falls Church, Virginia. And since that time, that's all I've done. Now, as I said, I think running for office there's nothing wrong with running for office. And I believe more people should be involved in the community.
All right, Faisal, so if I live in Sherman Oaks and I'm just trying to raise my family and pay the bills and keep my kids safe and my family safe, specifically, how does the city attorney impact my life, if at all?
Well, the city attorney impacts your life in many ways. City attorney has a jurisdiction of all misdemeanors under their.
But I mean, specifically, we know what the city attorney does, but
right.
How do you make my life better if I live in Sherman Oaks or in any place else, say in the Valley or even in Los Angeles?
Well, I make your life better by addressing the homelessness situation. I make your life better by making sure.
Addressing it how?
Well, I want to work with city council members and I want to work with the mayor to make sure that we permanently get people off the streets. Mental health issues are big, as you pointed out in your board. And what we need to do is we need to have programs in place that actually address that. I've said very clearly, the criminal justice system is not going to take care of this problem. What we need to do is we need to have diversion programs, which I will do. We need to have more mental health services, which I will help connect people with. And from the city council and the mayor's perspective, we need to have policies that actually will lead to transitional housing, temporary housing, and permanent housing. And as city attorney, I'm going to work to remove all legal obstacles that exist to get those done. That's what city attorney, what I can do there. On the criminal justice side, I actually want to look to see, what are the crimes that are affecting public safety? And I want to work towards putting the resources towards that, not worrying about who's loitering or charging with jaywalking that are clogging up the court system. The courts are clogged right now. As I defend clients, as they go in, a lot of them don't want diversion programs. They'll go to jail because they know they're going to be out in a couple of weeks. Jails are crowded.
Let me just follow up with that, and then we'll get to Hydee. I mean, there was some controversy a couple of months back about your proposal to use, quote, impose a moratorium on prosecuting certain misdemeanors. Can you explain what that actually is about? Does that need to be clarified? Are you still proposing that?
Look, the one thing that I said from the very beginning is that I want to make clear that I'm still going to prosecute, violent crimes that are serious crimes. What I said about the purpose of my 100-day moratorium or 100-day review period was to analyze the office, policies and priorities to see where could we spend the resources. And I didn't want to just do that for myself by just basically, setting out a policy that I put forth. I want to look at it. I want to get LAPD on the table. I want to get outside groups on the table as well. And then I want to sit there and decide, okay, how can we make this system? How can we actually make it to where we're putting the right resources in the right crimes? Not worrying about loitering, public drunkenness, or jaywalking crimes. So to me, this policy is a very sound policy on giving everybody, getting them around the table, getting the right policies, and not doing what, again, one of my criticisms of D.A. Gascon has been that he did it the other way around. He basically on day one issued a memo that said,
right,
all the crimes that I'm not going to prosecute. I don't want to do that on day one. I want to do this collaborative process. That's the rationale behind it.
Hydee, let me ask you what I asked him, which is, how do you feel that you can impact the lives of the typical Valley or Los Angeles resident as a city attorney?
I do have to unmute, don't I? I do apologize. Let me start with, I'm running to actually do the job and make our city work. Faisal tends to be running on a promise to not enforce the city's laws. I do think that law enforcement is part of the job.
Well, that's not what he said, but go ahead.
I've got the snapshot from his original website. I will impose a moratorium on all misdemeanors. That is what he originally said, and he's been backing off of it ever since because Karen Bass unendorsed him for that reason. So that is what he said. I'm glad he's changing his mind. Okay, because
referring to just now. All right, go ahead.
Now, let me be very specific about things I would do. Number one, the city of Los Angeles cannot build public housing without a repeal of Article 34 of the California Constitution. Senator Ben Allen has been trying to get that done since 2017. It's finally going to be on the ballot in 2024. I would urge everyone to vote for that because that would.
Want to briefly explain what that is?
Yes, Article 34 was enacted in 1950 in response to the big projects like Jordan Downs. And the state of California said, we don't want any more subsidized housing. We don't want any more government housing and therefore low-income housing. And therefore what that has done, it has taken away one of the most powerful tools that our municipality could have to actually build the housing that we need, as opposed to incentivizing others to build the housing that they can. I would streamline the building approval procedure. Right now, it takes 9-10 months to get something approved, even if it's by right. And sometimes what happens with an applicant is you get the housing department with comments that say move 2 steps to the left, and you get building and safety saying move 3 steps to the right. I would hope to work with council to streamline that, have one portal where you can e-file your plans. It goes out to all city departments at the same time, and the city speaks back to the applicant with one voice.
Is that a city attorney's role?
The city attorney, in fact, can be in the middle of process and procedure as part of how you get work done. That is part of the job. I mean, the city, my understanding.
Okay, so that's one example of like streamlining the building process. What are some other things? I know you talked about your priorities you've said are homelessness, public safety, and transparency. You know, every politician in the history of mankind has used the term transparency. What does that mean to you?
If you take a look at what Ron Galperin has done with the controller's office and the database,
Right.
that's what I'd like to bring to the city attorney's office. Public Record Act requests should not have to be repetitive and searched for all of the time. Common requests ought to be available. That kind of information ought to be as transparent for every citizen who wants it. Our statistical information on who we arrest, okay, and who we convict, and the kind of information that we need to ensure that our laws are being enforced fairly, justly, and equitably across the city ought to be available. The city contracts ought to be easily findable. Contracts in a given area, how they were awarded, how they have been amended, when do they terminate, and when are they up for rebid, ought to be easily available. Our oil well leases all the way across the board, as city council says, no new leases. The difficulty is that our leases are on automatic renewal. Unless you give a year's advance notice, they would automatically renew. And so those termination dates in each neighborhood really ought to be available. Faisal says he wants mental health. We don't have a health department. We are entirely dependent on the county. And our relationship with the county for public health dates back to a 6-page agreement that was entered into in 1964.
So everything's on the table for you, really, it sounds like.
Yes, everything is on the table to get fixed. And I actually think we are at an historic moment in our city where we are taking a look at ourselves and we are really in a position to make the kinds of fundamental changes that will make our city work better for everyone. And
So
I have the knowledge and experience to be a part of that.
Who are you supporting for mayor and why, Hydee?
I'm Switzerland, okay? Whoever is elected as the mayor, I will need to work with.
Right.
And I believe that we have two very different visions for the city. And I think that I will be able to work with either Congresswoman Bass or with Mr. Caruso, whoever winds up being elected.
So neither, you'd prefer not to endorse one or the other?
I honestly.
The reason I ask is because it might give our audience some insight into you.
And as far as I'm concerned, it's the same thing when I was asked how I felt about DA Gascon.
Yeah.
Okay. I have to work with whoever the DA is, whether that is George Gascon, who I know and have spoken to on more than one occasion, or whether it's somebody new. I have gotten into trouble by simply giving money.
Sound like a politician already. No, I'm just teasing.
I'm staying out of.
Let me ask Faisal. Faisal, are you interested in talking about who you think would be the better mayoral candidate?
Oh yeah, I have no problem saying it. I still support Karen Bass. I think Karen Bass is going to be the best mayor. I think Karen Bass is what Los Angeles needs, right? Who Los Angeles needs right now. She's got the experience, and I'm a wholehearted, fully throated supporter of Karen Bass.
And what do you see as the reason versus Rick Caruso? Is it the specifics of their policies or their personalities, or?
I think it's several. Obviously, their policies. I think Karen Bass's policies are better, and also experience. I think that in order to solve the homelessness crisis, I agree with Congressman Bass that she's going to need federal help. You're going to need federal money, and she's got the experience to do that.
But that's interesting to me because one of the criticisms that Caruso has of her is that it's business as usual, and that he's going to be a disruptor. And your campaign, you've made a point of saying it's not business as usual for me if I am elected. So do those conflict with each other?
No, it's different visions, different disruptors. Basically, he's going to be a disruptor, but I mean, he's got to work with council, and he's got to work with the government. Yeah. I think he's going to find, as he led a very large business empire, and he's a very successful person. But when, he had all the authority, right? He says something, and his employees. Right. Here in government, you say something, now you got to get City Hall to approve or City Council to approve, and you got to work with government. So it's different. The way that I'm saying that I'm going to disrupt is basically having a different vision for the city attorney's office, and basically placing the city attorney's office in a low position to be able to do much more than it has been.
What are your thoughts on the role of quote unquote government in a person's life?
I mean, I guess it depends on what the exact question is, or what the role is. I mean, For example, I mean, government has a role in education, right? Public schools, I think that's a great thing. So it just depends on what the role is of government in a person's life. So if you'd ask the question, I'd be happy to answer that. But I do think government has a role to play in, a person's life, and they've been playing it and making sure they're, keeping public safety and making sure, we've got a good, strong school system in place. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
Heidi, can I ask you that same thing? I mean, do you have sort of a philosophical view of the quote unquote role of government?
Yes, I do. I believe in good government. I was brought up in an area where government is a force for good. Government goes from the bare minimum of taking care of the commons, okay, and external defense, and then following the rule of law internally. But our vision of our republic and our democratic values go far beyond that. Our vision of government, we lifelong Democrats, are that government is there to foster liberties, to provide a safety net, to be a force for good, to provide economic opportunity, and to provide services to our constituents for the necessities of life. We live in a very wealthy society. We live in a place where we really ought to function for the benefit of us all and to uplift the entirety of our constituency, providing pathways and opportunities to a better life. What has happened in our current government is that unfortunately, we've been hollowing out our middle class and we've been enslaving our poor. And so we need to find a way to make this a dream and a vision for everyone, and to bring back that sense that government can be part of a solution, not something that throws up obstacles in the way of people trying to get things done. And I believe that our government can do that.
This current City Hall scandal, and I know you're both on the record, I believe, of calling for the resignations of De Leon and Cedillo, even though Cedillo's on the way out. A lot of the fallout has been that it exposes people's distrust of elected officials. Paul Krikorian, who we all know, said his number one priority is try to rebuild the trust in our elected representatives when he was elected council president yesterday. I mean, let me start with Faisal. Do you think that in general people distrust politicians, and should they? Or is that founded or unfounded? Or
Look, I absolutely think that people distrust politicians because they, as I'm going out, we go canvassing every weekend or on weekdays as well. And when we talk to people out there, that's one of their criticisms of politicians, that, politicians promise everything and deliver nothing. I mean, that's what, and all the scandal has proven is that the backroom dealing that takes place and how, as people say, the government really works. And it's just kind of brought that to light. And unfortunately, labor was involved as well. So people's distrust is further, there's more skeptical of politicians now. And I think one of the things that we do need to do is bring back that trust. Now, your second part of the question is, should they? Look, I think there's a lot of politicians out there that are out there to do good, that are in public service because they really want to change, the system, and they really want to make good things. I mean, Karen Bass is certainly one of them, Holly Mitchell, others that could be doing a lot of other things, but they're basically doing a good job. But government as a whole, people distrust. And what we need is people to hold government accountable, especially our city hall. Look, LA has had a horrible record. I mean, absolute horrible record, right? From scandal after scandal.
Including the city attorney's office.
Including the city attorney's office, absolutely. And, DWP, city attorney's office, LAPD. I mean, we've had in the last couple of years, just 3 council members that have been indicted, 2 convicted, and one now, facing trial. Now we've got a scandal of 3 others. I mean, there is a lot of issues that are going out there. That's why I feel that city attorney's office has got to be in there and has got to hold these politicians accountable and make sure that we go after corruption. I mean, I don't agree with my, opponent who says that the city attorney's office can't do anything about corruption in City Hall. Absolutely can, or can't hold city officers accountable. Absolutely they can. I mean, the city attorney's office is no different than any other legal office that exists. Attorney General.
Okay, Heidi, I know you wanted to clarify that or dispute that point, but then after you do that, can you also answer the similar question about the trust of elected officials?
Yeah, but hold on one second, because I'm tired of my words being parsed out and then mischaracterized and outright lied. What I said.
Your words.
Can you wait until I'm done? I waited till you were done, Mr. Gill.
Yes, ma'am.
As far as I am concerned, the only thing I have ever said is that the city attorney cannot prosecute a sitting city official. And there's at least 3 reasons for that, legal reasons, and I'm sorry to get in the weeds. Number 1, the city charter in Article 7 gives that power to the Ethics Commission, not the city attorney, and the city attorney has to render legal services to the Ethics Commission. Number 2, the municipal corporation that is the city of Los Angeles is the client of the city attorney, and the city attorney, without the consent of council or a waiver, is not the right prosecutor. Number 3, most public corruption is a felony, and we are all better off with having the independent investigation by the district attorney, the attorney general, or the US attorney. Now, let me address what I would do about corruption. Number 1, I have repeatedly said from the first week on the campaign trail that I would put a stop to no bid contracts, which are the biggest avenue for corruption in our city's procurement process. Number 2, I would put a stop to this idea that you can award a contract not only without competitive bidding, but without adequate review from different departments. So we need to import best practices in a compliance program. Number 3, I would work with council to put an end to the practice of having undated signed letters of resignation from our commissioners, so that our commissioners serve at the absolute pleasure of the person who appointed them. If we're going to have a commission that works, our ethics commission needs to serve for a term of years, and they need to be insulated from the vagaries of the political winds, and need to be insulated from the desires of those who they would otherwise be charged with investigating. We need to have our staff and our city officials testifying before our commissions and before city council under oath. At this point, anybody can go in front of city council and say anything, and if they lie, it's not even under penalty of perjury. And so to say that I would do nothing about corruption is an absolute lie and a mischaracterization of everything I've been saying from the inception of my campaign. What I've been saying is I would focus on the prevention of corruption, and there is so much to be done in that regard, and I'm the right person to do it. Now, you asked another question before, which was what? Because I forgot it.
Do you feel people are justified in their distrust of elected officials?
I think it depends on the elected official, but by and large, there is some form of inbreeding. There is some level of arrogance and entitlement that often accompanies length of time in public service. And that is the reason why originally we put in term limits. The purpose of term limits has really been eviscerated by the concept that a particular individual can run for different offices off of the same constituency and the same electorate. From my perspective, we have to get back to a place where we have open data, open transparency, open accountability, and not cute tricks forming side caucuses and side effects of how we get things done in our city. The worst thing to me about that tape, and I listened to an hour, 19 minutes and 32 seconds of it, was the notion that the 4 people in that room could and should be building a structure for the benefit of a particular group in what is the most diverse city in the world, rather than representing all of the constituents and all of the neighborhoods and all of the folks that make up Los Angeles.
But isn't that what politicians have been doing since there have been politicians? Doesn't make it right, but I mean, is that shocking to you?
I don't know. I grew up, in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and I grew up in a simpler time when we believed that George Washington cut down the cherry tree and told the truth. What do I know? I like to think that there are still politicians, better yet, that there are still individuals who are in this for public service. The only reason I'm running for office is to do the job. I will not be running for any other office. I don't want to be a player in politics. I want to be one of the elected officials that actually focuses on getting things done.
Well, let me, this segues into sort of our next question. We're going to start some questions that have been submitted to SOHA from members. Faisal, the current city attorney, Mike Fuhrer, and others have talked about an independent redistricting commission that might result in some positive change as a result of this scandal, as opposed to the way it's done now, where essentially the council members have the final say over the redistricting. I would assume you would support that, or do you support that, and why?
No, absolutely, wholeheartedly. Look, redistricting is, as we found out, is ripe for corruption. I mean, because it's basically politicians protecting their turf, and no politician wants to cede their turf. So absolutely, an independent commission that basically is binding, and they do the redistricting. That is exactly the way to go, and I would wholeheartedly support that. I wholeheartedly support that.
Heidi, your thoughts on that proposal?
I don't have anything to add to what Faisal said. For once, we agree.
Okay. This is an interesting question, and we've touched on this a little bit, but just to be blunt, one of the SOHA board members, I'll start with Heidi. Tell us something about your opponent that really troubles you, concerns you.
It's a long list.
Well, you have about a minute.
He took out a $20,000 PPP loan 3 days after he funded hundreds of thousands of dollars into his political campaign. He moved to Los Angeles in 2019, lives in a rented single-family home in a gated community in Porter Ranch, doesn't have the depth of experience in the city, and yet he proposes homeless encampments and safe injection sites, which of course will never be in his gated community. He is somebody who has done a 180-degree turn on his politics, from offering free legal services to people who wanted to break up gay marriages in Virginia, and from being 100% pro-life in his own words, being supported by people like Ken Cuccinelli and Grover Norquist, to now this far left progressive thing. And it's not as if he registered as a Republican when he was 18 and then changed his registration. He was a 40-year-old man in Virginia when he held these extremist right-wing views, and he's evolved, I guess. But to me, this is somebody who's trying to find an office, any office. He's donated millions of dollars to politicians, and he's put nearly $2 million of his own money into this campaign to try to buy it. And his financial disclosure statement is 4 pages long and says the only thing he owns is his law firm, which according to him is worth less than $1 million. Whereas I filed a 33-page disclosure statement that gave you every asset I ever had, disclosed the source of every money and every cent that I have, and he won't tell you where he gets his money from. Where did the $2 million that he put into?
We're going to ask him that question, but Mr. Gill or Faisal, you have the same opportunity. What is it about your opponent that concerns you?
Can I answer that question that she just leveled the charges against me, or?
Well, I'm going to ask that as a separate question. So why don't we focus on that one first? What is it that you're concerned about Ms. Feinstein Soto?
Well, I mean, she doesn't have the experience to lead this office. She talks about that she has the experience to lead this office. She's really never gone to court. The time that she did go to court, she was sanctioned by a judge for $250,000. She had to be told by a judge to go learn the rules of civil procedure. She doesn't know court. She doesn't know how to handle herself in court. And I think her vision is basically the status quo. She's going to keep things the status quo. She said that she'll do pretty much whatever the council asks her to do. So I just don't think the vision is there. Whereas those are some of the problems. I mean, I don't get into personal attacks, and it's the experience that I think is the issue. And I think, to sit there and say that, she's funded by business leaders, she's funded by lobbyists right now. So I don't know who she's going to be working for, and she said, city attorney is not the attorney for the people. So I think just our policy issues are very different. I think she doesn't have the experience to lead this office. She certainly doesn't.
And another question, another question submitted to SOHA, to Faisal. You self-funded your campaign with nearly $2 million. Yeah. What's the source of your funds, and will you release your tax returns?
Well, I think I find it so interesting that people believe that somebody who's brown and Muslim, and I've been an attorney for 20 years, I can't make money. I mean, do I have to work for a big law firm to make money? I was a former White House counsel. I was a deputy general counsel of the Office of Personnel Management. I've handled some of the largest cases in the United States.
But didn't you also say when you applied for that PPP loan that you were a small business struggling to survive?
Look, PPP loan was basically given just about to everybody. Our accountant told us to do it. We did it. It was basically done in accordance with the law. I got $20,000, which is the most anybody could get if they owned their own law firm. So I didn't lie on anything.
No, nobody's saying that.
But I mean, so I guess that's my question, is if if.
Well, I guess you have the money to fund your
Well,
campaign.
I mean, yeah, I have the money to fund my campaign. Campaign finance issues are difficult issues, and I believe in my
Controversial, yeah.
campaign. It's not as if Ms. Feldstein Soto couldn't have done the same thing. She's got millions of dollars. If she wished to fund her campaign, she could. Look, we're not taking money from big corporations. We're not taking money from lobbyists. So, we have to find ways to fund our campaign.
I mean, do you think this is even like a relevant question?
I don't. I really don't. I mean, and what's been going on, I guess, for the last few days, and which is really troubling to me, considering the racism in our city, is that people have been saying, "Oh, where does he get his money from?" And Ms. Feldstein Soto has been leading this. Is it from the Middle East? I'm not even from the Middle East. I moved here when I was 8 years old. And to sit there and say, she made a big point of saying, "I live in a rented house." Okay, I live in a rented house. I mean, there's various reasons I do that, but I don't understand the rationale behind the question. The ethics forms that I filled them out correctly. I don't own stocks. I don't own businesses. I don't own real estate. What I do have is a pretty good savings account. I have made money for 20 years and I have saved money and I have that. So I don't.
Let me follow up with one more question about that. And that Hydee alluded to it earlier. The question is, how can you explain your reversals of positions on key issues such as abortion rights? And is that troubling to voters? Why did you change parties? And as a result of that, people are saying, well, how do we know what to believe from you?
Yeah, so look, I changed parties and I changed positions 15 years ago. It's not like I did it yesterday, and it wasn't for political expediency. I'll address the issue of abortion, first of all. Look, that was a position of mine that I held back in 2006 and 2007, and I was wrong. I've evolved on that issue, and it's not because of political convenience. I mean, I changed my position in 2008. I didn't run for anything until 2016. It was based on my own lived experiences. I was born and raised in a very insular, conservative Muslim community. Growing up, my parents and the elders that we looked at in the mosque, basically that was the position that we had held. As I said, I had a child when I was 18 years old. In 2008, somebody mentioned to me and somebody asked me, "Hey, were you ready to be a father at 2018? Excuse me one second. And the answer was no. I wasn't ready to be a father at 18, but I never really had a choice. Abortion was never considered with my family and at that time, my girlfriend's family. And we had a child and neither one of us were ready to raise a child. And I love my son dearly. I cannot imagine life without him. But that made me kind of realize, wait a second, nobody should be forced to be a parent. And, Hydee says I was 40 years old. I wasn't 40 years old. I was just 32 years old when I ran for office in 2006. I was born in 72, by the way, Hydee. So I was in my 30s. And I've changed since that time. Positions, and I've done everything in my power to show that I have changed. I've worked for pro-life candidates. I've worked for pro-choice candidates. I've worked for pro-choice causes. And I think it's a good thing that people change their mind. In fact, when I go out and I talk to people, I don't want to talk to the choir. I want to talk to people who have positions opposite of my positions, because I want to tell them, hey, here is why you should view the way that I want to.
Hydee, have you ever changed your mind on any issues like this?
Not core issues.
And what did you think of his answer?
Well, the answer has also evolved over time. When we first started this process, Mr. Gill did not come forward and say, by the way, I used to be a Republican and here's my evolution. It's only as it came out over the course of the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I understand that he signed at least one questionnaire in which he claimed he'd never run for elected office before, which was clearly not true.
Why would he do that?
I don't know. I don't know the answer. I can't tell you why he did anything, but I can tell you this. The first time I asked the question, he gave a long explanation, and there is a videotape of it out of Vermont, where he said, well, I was a member of the Republican Party, but then they took my money. They gave me a seat at the table as long as I was supporting them. But the minute I wanted a seat at the table, I found them to be racist because they didn't elect me. And my answer to him at that time was, so you're telling me that if you'd been elected in that first election in Virginia, you'd still be that guy? And he has never given that answer again. So from my perspective, it's just nonsense. It's a lot of shifting evolution. And what really seems to be driving it is whatever resonates with whatever population is in the city or the county or the state where he's running for office.
Faisal, it seems like you would like to respond to that.
Oh, God, yes, what I like.
And
to
I'm not sure how this helps, quite frankly, voters in Sherman Oaks determine who'd be the better city attorney, but go ahead.
It really doesn't. I mean, it really doesn't. Look, it was 15 years ago, and the Republican Party, and I've said it very clearly, is a racist party. And I don't back away from that. I've said that, and everybody's known I'm a Republican. I mean, I said it from the first time that I ran for office. It was in my first issue. The questionnaire that Hydee is alluding to, it was a questionnaire that was asked about in the labor Federation of Labor COPE interview, and it said in Los Angeles or in California, and I've never run. But look, let's get back to the core issues of what Hydee is doing. I'm sure she wants to run this election as if it was in 2006, but it's not. It's 2022. And, I have a 15-year record of being a progressive Democrat. I was the chairman of the Vermont State Democratic Party. I mean, good God, they attacked me over there for being too progressive. In this election, I get attacked for being too progressive. Hydee attacks me for being too progressive. Oh, moratorium. And then I get attacked for being too conservative. So, I just want to say, hey, look, just pick a lane and attack me on one thing and I'll address that. But I think the voters want to know what our issues are and what we're going to do. Now,
here's a scenario that's frustrating for so many, that this is a concrete information. You've both talked about homelessness and that as a priority, of course. So just a hypothetical. A man's walking down the sidewalk in Sherman Oaks completely naked. He's clearly mentally disturbed. What is your vision of what should happen to him, and by whom and how fast? Should he be arrested? Is that a police problem? Should he be arrested? Should he be would you prosecute? Let me start with Hydee. That kind of scenario, that we saw in Sherman Oaks, or the man throwing the bag of human waste at a business owner who's now in mental health court. This is what's so frustrating for the average homeowner, is that, and I've seen it myself when I'm out on stories, you're parked at the side of the street, there's a man or woman clearly in mental distress, doing something harmful to themselves. It's not immediately a police problem. You call 211, which even the county supervisors admit is a joke. The LASA has a portal that you can go online and fill out 100 questions, and maybe a month from now, a social worker will come. So in other words, what can you do? What would you do in that kind of a scenario, like tomorrow, if you see that happening? Hydee.
Let me put it to you this way. We need to start addressing that situation at every level. You have state law that says that you cannot put somebody in a care environment involuntarily. They have to accept the care that you offer unless they are a danger to themselves or others. There is a court case from the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals up in Northern California that says that anybody who is incompetent to stand trial, who is so mentally ill that they can't even be put on trial criminally, either has to be in a psychiatric bed or has to be put back out on the streets within 28 days, even if they are a violent serial offender. That is the current state of the law. And so we have got to put ourselves in a position where we have an option for confinement for the good of the individual and for the good of society that doesn't involve criminal justice, that does involve medication for schizophrenia, that does involve—
That's fine, but how do you get them off the sidewalk tomorrow?
The only way that we have today is we
what,
call the
5150?
paramedics, we call the LAPD, and we put a temporary 72-hour hold on the person. That's the only legal tool in the toolkit. So the first thing we need to do is start developing other legal tools, because that doesn't do any good. That's a revolving door for someone who cannot care for themselves.
Right.
And we need to get them into an environment where they can get the care they need.
I mean, do you have the experience to make that happen? Do you have the experience to make those kinds of things happen?
Do I have the experience? It's a policy issue. Do I have the experience to draft the laws? Yes, of course. I mean, that's how I spent my life, was drafting. I don't think the courts are the answer. The fact that the Alliance lawsuit has fallen in the lap, and I have nothing but respect for Judge David Carter. He's taken on a thankless task, but we have put the issue of homelessness in the lap of a 78-year-old district court judge, who most lawyers who I know say he doesn't have jurisdiction except by consent. He's
Hmm.
rendering an advisory opinion because there's no federal question other than the ADA access, and there's no diversity jurisdiction. So it doesn't belong in the courts. It belongs in our policymakers and in lawyers who can draft the solutions to get people into the care they need without a carceral process.
Do you support the Governor Newsom's care court concept?
I have glanced at it. I'm still digesting it, and I'm
It's big, yeah.
also looked. I mean, there's a lot of legislation that has passed this session, and usually I'm a lot more on top of Sacramento legislation than I am right now because of campaigning. But
Okay.
the city attorney's office, for example, has now been given investigatory subpoena power over affirmative civil litigation as of September 28th of this year. That is
So-
a huge step in the right direction of what we can do to investigate the care systems and the housing providers and the nursing homes and the people who are providing care, but in some cases are alleged to be abusive. So there's a lot that the city attorney can do to create an environment where people who are a danger to themselves or others, or who are jeopardizing our kids on their way to schools. We have to have safe neighborhoods and safe schools for our kids to go to. And that's what all of us want. And that sometimes means that a person who is unable to contain their own behavior has to be confined for the good, not only of themselves, but for the good of others.
Well, I don't think anybody would disagree with that. I guess it's the mechanism by which you do that that is the challenge. Faisal, let me ask you that same sort of scenario. I mean, where there's a homeless person who clearly needs help and people feel frustrated that maybe he or she has more rights than a business owner or a residence owner.
Look, yeah, look, in that situation, certainly if they're walking as a situation as you described it,
I mean, that's just one sort of hypothetical,
Right, but I mean, a homeless person doing something other than just basically sitting, lying, sleeping on there, I have no problem if the, LAPD or paramedics pick them up and bring them, but I would not charge them with a crime. What I would basically do, unless they did, depending on the scenario, what I would do is I would connect them to services and I would put them in diversion program. I would connect them to services. That's what they really need. They need services. We need mental health services, and the county has the mental health services. And by the way, and I know this is outside of my jurisdiction as city attorney, but I agree with Karen Bass that we should not be building a city mental health services because that's going to be too costly and it's going to take 10 years. What we do need to do is we need to work with the county a lot more and to get mental health for these people. And that's exactly what I would do. I would use, and look, you've got to try to get them in the mental health system, and not just the county system. There's a whole bunch of services out there, nonprofit groups that also provide services. So between the nonprofit groups and between the county, I would get them.
Right.
But I fully support getting that person off the street and making sure that
right. But obviously, everybody understands that.
Right.
But if it was that simple, it would have been done already.
I agree. Look, I agree, and this might not be a popular thing to say, but I'm not going to lie to folks over here. The city attorney has a limited role that they can play in actually fully taking care of the homeless situation. This is a policy issue. It's got to be done by city council, and it's got to be done by the board of supervisors. I agree with my opponent Hydee that the agreement that exists between the city and the county needs to be redrafted, needs to be reworked, but that's going to be a policy issue. They said the city attorney can just go and tell Supervisor Holly Mitchell and others to say, hey, here's how we want to redo it. That's just not going to work. It's got to be the council and the board of supervisors working together. What the city attorney can do is provide legal advice to get that new agreement done. And that's what I want to do.
All right, we've got about 5 minutes left or so. And we'd like to spend some time with the two of you talking to each other.
If that's we've done that during this, right?
So Faisal, is there anything you would like to ask Hydee, and we can go from there?
On the corruption, Hydee, you said that you don't think the city attorney can hold any city officer, can prosecute any city officer. And those are your words, and we're just taking your words. If that's the case, then are you saying that no city officer can ever be charged with a speeding ticket, a DUI, any other infraction that exists in the city of Los Angeles? Because right now, it is the city attorney that prosecutes all city officers who commit those infractions, who commit those misdemeanors.
What I said, and let's be clear, was you can't prosecute a sitting city official for corruption. Prosecute means bring a criminal action in court, a sitting city official for public corruption, which is usually a felony, not a misdemeanor. I gave you all of the reasons of why. I do intend to hold corrupt individuals accountable. My office would have never been raided by the Department of Justice. I've said that repeatedly, because I would have done a privilege log and gone to court and said, here are the privilege documents, Your Honor, please rule. My office would work to strengthen the independence of the Ethics Commission, which is the body under the city charter that is responsible and has the authority to investigate corruption. And by
And
getting
where is the Ethics Commission these days anyway? I'm wondering that question myself.
there's
like
five, there's 5 members, and the problem is 2 of them have been replaced in the last 18 months.
Yeah.
People are appointed, as you know, Phil, under this horrific practice where they have to sign an undated letter of resignation.
Yeah.
And the argument is that as soon as they start to do their job, they get
Right.
pulled. Now, I think that Council Member Rahman and some others, I think Council President Krikorian, I think Council Member Rodriguez and Council Member Price have really pointed out that it's time to fix things. I think there's unanimity on the ongoing members of council. Council Member Blumenfield has spoken on this issue, and we have an opportunity at this point to build a truly independent ethics commission. I would appoint them for a minimum of 5 years. Why? Because that spans over into another administration,
Right.
which gives them true independence. And I would make the appointment subject to certain qualifications and certain levels of expertise. And I would charge the city attorney with the obligation to help them and bring things forward and make the case for the Ethics Commission. I would then put the attorney-client privilege and the duty of loyalty in the hands of the Ethics Commission so that the Ethics Commission can waive whatever conflict otherwise exists and say to the city attorney, yes, go chase this down. But that's how the charter works. Happy to talk about charter reform. I'm dealing with the reality of where we are today.
All right. Well, this has been a really fascinating hour for me. I hope for others. And what I'd like to do before we wrap things up is give each of you an opportunity to essentially make your closing argument to the jury here.
I don't get a question. I don't get a question.
You want a question?
I want a question.
I'm just trying to keep it moving, but sure. You got a question, so I thought you had more than enough time to answer. But
all right, forget.
Please, ask
really,
no, go ahead.
My question is, why did you move to Los Angeles, Faisal, and why is less than 5% of your contributions from residents of the city of LA? And why haven't you talked more about your connections to Kevin DeLeon and Nuri Martinez as you've called for their resignation?
So why did I move to Los Angeles? Well, Heidi, as you know, I first moved to Los Angeles in 2008. That's when I registered to vote here. That's when I lived in Venice. That's when I was active in politics. So I moved here. My kids have gone to, I've got 6 kids. My kids have gone to elementary school here, middle school here, high school here, and college here. I moved away from here for work in Vermont, and then I missed my kids. I have 3 kids who lived here at the time. I've got 3 since then. I've had 3 kids who lived here, and I missed my kids. So I moved back to Los Angeles to be with my kids. That's why I moved to Los Angeles. Now, why are 5% of my, again, I don't know the percentage, but if you look at my political donations, most of them are from my family and friends. And I think that, you know, when you run for office, that's where you get your donations from, family and friends. A lot of, you know, I'm proud to say that I've had family who was able to give me, help me out in this. And there are, and I've got a Muslim community who are very proud of the fact that there's got a Muslim who's running for office and, you know, actually has a shot of winning an office. So that's why I'm getting donations from all over the place. Again, I don't see what the issue there is of getting donations from family and friends. But to sit there and say, when you know for a fact that I moved here in 2008 because you've done your opposition research and you know I lived in Venice and you know I supported Garcetti and all that sort of stuff, I think it's very disingenuous of you. You know that I did that. I mean, anybody can go look at my voting history and go look at the fact that I voted at that time and, supported Garcetti and all those. Now, my connections to Nori Martinez and Kevin DeLeon, I don't know what you mean by that. I mean, yes, I know them. And yes, I know Kevin DeLeon, and I thought Kevin DeLeon was a friend of mine. But I don't support this. That's why, friend or not friend, I was the first one to call for his resignation while you called for their censure.
Hey, Phil, let me, this is Matt. I don't think I'm up on the screen itself, but Phil, a few of the audience members before this and a couple of them during asked, would just like to get a comment from each of them, yes or no, if they're supported by or if they are big fans of the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America. If Hydee can answer that first, and then Faisal.
No, I'm not supported by the DSA. Faisal Gill is the recommended candidate in this race. And I have to admit that I always knew I would make history if I was elected as the first woman city attorney. I never expected to be turned into Joan of Arc on Twitter every night by DSA supporters.
Okay. So Faisal, you are supported by DSA?
Look, I've never saw DSA's endorsement. I've never saw DSA's endorsement, and in their guide, they have listed me as a recommended candidate, as a lot of other organizations have.
Okay.
You okay with that?
Are you okay with that, Faisal? As far as are you a DSA fan?
I don't know, I'm a DSA fan, but yeah, I'm okay with. Look, I love to get support from a very broad coalition. So
No.
I'm getting DSA.
So you do support the DSA message?
I mean, no, I didn't say I support the DSA message. You asked if I was a fan, and I said, look, I haven't really looked a lot into the DSA's policies and what they stand for. There's policies that some I agree with and some I wholeheartedly disagree with, but I've never sought their endorsement. They have supported me, and I welcome support from all walks of Los Angeles.
Okay.
All right. Hydee, thanks for reminding me that you were owed a question. That was good. So now, as I mentioned, we'd like to each perhaps take a minute or two and give us your closing argument. Let's start with Hydee. Why should we support you for city attorney?
Well, let me start by saying that I was a litigator for the first 10 years of my practice. I don't really talk about it because that's not where I made my mark, and that's not where I became well known as a lawyer. And I don't usually view what young associates do at big law firms as being serious litigation. But yes, I've got a few trials under my belt. And yes, I had been in court as a very young lawyer. I don't think the city attorney's job is to go to court on individual matters. However, what's far more important is the ability to supervise and lead by example and manage other lawyers, which is a little bit like herding cats. I have managed other lawyers in at least 3 capacities. One is I ran very large multidisciplinary deal teams, often cross-border, across time zones. 2 is I was the head of the corporate practice at one of my law firms here in LA, the LA corporate department, I should say. And 3 is I was the co-head of the commercial finance and restructuring group at another one of my law firms. So I have managed lawyers. I am steeped in Six Sigma and management tools and techniques, and a very big part of the day-to-day job of the city attorney is the ability to manage lawyers who don't do what you do, because in today's environment, there is no lawyer who does everything. And so, no, I would not intend to go to court personally. That is one of the worst mistakes that a managing general partner can make. I would intend to have enough experience and knowledge, which I believe I have far more than Mr. Gill, in supervising other lawyers who don't do what I do. Why should you vote for me? I'm a 40-year resident. I'm called to public service. I'm going to do this job and no other. I have never described myself as a player who's going to come back and seek political office again. And I really want to help make the city work for us all. Please do me the honor of giving me your vote between now and November 8th. Thank you.
Faisal.
Well, first of all, again, I want to thank you all for taking time when you could be doing a lot of other things and listening to our vision and listening to why we want to run for this office. I hope what I've relayed to you is why I want to run for this office. I mean, despite all the negativity and all the stuff that my opponent has wanted to share, my issues that I'm running for are solid, and I've basically talked about them my entire campaign. Criminal justice reform. I want to hold City Hall accountable. I think we can hold City Hall accountable. I think the city attorney's office can do a lot more than it has been doing in the past. And that's one of the reasons I believe we have so much corruption, is because the city attorney's office, it does not view, itself as someone that can take on corruption and prosecute corruption, as the Political Reform Act specifically calls the city attorney to do. Besides criminal justice reform, there's also an affirmative litigation department. I want to focus on that. I want to go after, corporate actors that are doing bad. I think one of the things that Mike Fuhrer has done a very good job of is by holding Wells Fargo and others accountable and in the affirmative litigation department. And that's exactly what I'm also going to do. You've heard here today that I used to be a Republican. I mean, I've never hid that fact. I didn't hide that fact anywhere else. I do think that people can evolve. I mean, my opponent is supporting somebody right now who used to be a former Republican in a city council race right now. I've had different positions, and I've, again, made no secret of that. But what I think is important for you all and the people of Sherman Oaks to know is, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And who has the experience of being a lawyer? She's right. Lawyers, city attorney does not go into court him or herself. However, you have to have the knowledge of basically managing litigation. You have to know when a case is good and when a case is not good. And you have to know the arguments. And the only one of us that has done that is me. I've never been sanctioned by court for $250,000 by a judge. I have never been, told by a judge, hey, why don't you read the rules of civil procedure? I know what the job entails. I've been a deputy general counsel of the Office of Personnel Management. I've advised government officials. I've been in the White House. I have the experience. Thank you so much thank you so much for listening to us.
Matt?
Phil, thank you very much for a very, very fluid conversation with these two candidates. Thank you, Hydee. Thank you, Faisal, for your time tonight. Everybody, please vote. It's super, super important, not just for this, but for all the ballot measures and all the electeds that have spent their time. I promised everybody to let you know who our guest speaker is next month. And our speaker next month is our police chief, Michael Moore. He is, it's going to be a very interesting conversation with everything that's going on with the Unhoused, with the political climate. It'll be just after the election, so he'll give us a little bit of information on his connection with whoever the new mayor is. So tune in next month. Michael has been a great friend of Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association. He'll also be at our toy drive. He hasn't missed it in years and years and years. I don't think he's ever missed it, actually, he and his wife.
What's the date on that?
The date on the toy drive is December the 11th. So anyway, that is it. Thank you very, very much, everybody, for tuning in. And again, thanks candidates, and thanks, Phil. And we'll talk to you guys all next month.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.